you're not giving it your all when you know you are. God hates divorce, but why? According to everybody I've asked and the scriptures that I've found, it's because it hurts people. But does abuse hurt people? How do you think God feels about that? So I want to remind you, like a bunch of people have been reminding me lately, that I'm God's bride first. And even an earthly spouse who's a good spouse, when they know that their bride is being hurt, just imagine what an earthly spouse does. What do you think your heavenly spouse does when you're the bride of Christ and he sees his bride going through abuse and hurt? What do you think he thinks about that? So, encouragement in all this is you are the bride of Christ first before anybody else's. And he's got you. And he sees you. And he loves you.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello from Cape Canaveral, Florida, and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic community in true crime. When we examine John Paul Miller as a separate entity, there are a number of issues with his statements, with his effect, with his sermon, and with his situation as a pastor who needs to protect his reputation. When we examine Mica Miller's story, as we will in this analysis, and especially her final social media posts, it starts to become clearer that some darkly inevitable denouement was brewing, one that was building and about to explode. One can take John Paul's sermons and Mica's social media and speculate whether it had anything to do with their own specific marital problems. But you know what? We don't have to speculate. We don't have to guess, because we know they were divorcing. We know they had separated, and John Paul was served divorce papers 48 hours before Mica's sudden death. So on the question, when he was talking about problems with a spouse in church, you bet he was talking about her. And when she was talking about terrible things and danger, you bet she was talking about her marriage. Even Mica's sister Sierra knew that Pastor Paul was using his pulpit to address his haters on Facebook. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Welcome to the hundreds of you who have subscribed in the last couple of days. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be filming a rocket launch from Cape Canaveral this evening, so look out for more content on that on this channel. And let's get started. So I want to start off by looking at this post from Sierra Francis, posted on March the 17th, 1 month and 10 days before Mica's death. She writes, "As I was sitting in church today, I received a text message. Usually I don't check my phone and I keep it on silent. But with everything going on with my sister Mica, I've made it a point to try to keep an eye on it for fear of her safety due to others' behavior towards her." So there's another reference to safety. To no surprise, it was a message about what was said from the pulpit today in Myrtle Beach at her church. I have so much sadness that someone could take the position that was hopefully given to them by God and use it for their own benefit. Then she goes on to say, when the pastor is married and is on stage giving a sermon saying he's going to pray to God for a hot wife, that should raise a million flags. When a pastor is on stage in a sermon saying he's going to wave to all his Facebook haters on his private plane on the way to Miami, that should raise a red flag. And she goes on all of this, saying all of this kind of thing. She also writes, when the pastor is saying he shouldn't be up there preaching to you, you should hear what he's saying and take it seriously. I can only imagine how emotionally straining it is for Mica having somebody in a position of influence spreading lies about her to the entire congregation. And I commend my sister for standing tall. So, there you have something from her sister that seems to be addressing exactly what we're talking about here. What this shows in no uncertain terms is that there was a social media war going on right up until the point Mica lost her life. There are some posts on Mica's Facebook page that are also worth looking at. We're going to look at 3 of those posts, starting on the 17th of April, which is exactly a month after Sierra posted the post I've just read to you. Success is not always what you see. Now, this was posted barely a week before her death on Saturday, the 27th of April. Mica seems to be suggesting that hidden beneath appearances are lies, exaggerations, and manipulations. Now, based on what I've just read, and based on what was said by her sister a month and 10 days earlier, isn't she talking about lies, exaggerations, and manipulations? A pastor influencing his congregation. Who do you think she had in mind? Who do you think Mica had in mind when she posted this? I mean, she was already in the process of preparing divorce papers at this point. Then on the 9th of April, when terrible, in all caps, things happen to you, you all know what I'm talking about. Mica uses the word terrible 3 times, and we know something terrible did happen to her. Whatever she was talking about seemed to prompt her to take action, and in that same month of hiring a divorce lawyer and beginning the divorce process, she was dead. Now, nowhere in these posts is there any sense of despair and her talking about, things in the sort of despairing way that one would think about mental illness. This is someone who actually seems to be on top of things, although struggling to deal with a situation. But you can see she's not crying on social media. She's not hopeless or helpless. And so one does have to ask, what terrible thing happened to her? And then perhaps the most ominous of them all was this post from 22nd March, right? And that was basically 5 days after her sister's post, where she writes, please share this with anyone struggling with leaving a dangerous situation because they think God will be mad at them. And so just 5 days after her sister was so upset by what Pastor Paul had said in church, she left this very unambiguous message about leaving a bad relationship. Yes, she's talking about leaving a dangerous situation literally a month before she did just that. She was trying to leave a dangerous situation. One thing I didn't fully realize was the extent of Mica's involvement with John Paul's church. I didn't realize she was so involved with it so late in, or so close to when she died. She was still part of the church's latest March 23rd, where she posted, biggest honor of my life to share stage with Cain. And you can see the church paraphernalia in the background. What we see with this church is how services are live streamed, and the church has several very active social media accounts. Basically, this church has a very real digital life, this very real social media existence, or existence in social media. And so in a situation like that, where there's a divorce, the divorce is coming from the pastor or the pastor's wife, and the pastor's basically the one running the show. It's his church. And the pastor's wife is divorcing the pastor, and both the pastor and the pastor's wife are beginning the opening salvos of their ruinous campaigns on social media one can see how we are dealing with an explosive situation that's rigged to blow. Isn't that what we're looking at here? The loser in the situation could lose everything: his name, his congregation, his livelihood, or her life. Today, when there were I wrote this yesterday. So yesterday, when there were memorial services and protests, it was easy to miss the obvious. Those supporting Mica, dressed in purple shirts, all congregated outside the church, but not only that, on the opposite side of the road. And this is likely because they were told, as I was when I was there, it was private property. Think about that. Supporters of the pastor's wife are being shunned by Team John Paul. There was also a memorial service at the same time on the beach as another in the church, and so you almost have this contest going on, this contest of narratives, which is kind of a parallel to the contest of narratives that were going on between John Paul and Mica. And this aftermath proves exactly what was going on, I believe. That someone was trying to nip in the bud. Two sides to a story were emerging. And if one person on one side wasn't careful, they would lose. And so someone took control of the situation. Someone took control of the narrative. Think about how John Paul said, I'm going to get you to stand. You're not going to say anything. Once I've said this, you're going to go outside the church and not talk about this. And if you think about it, someone took control of the situation, thought they were doing damage control, but the fallout is only just beginning. This wrecking ball isn't done yet. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.